medication is easy with City Drugstore's curbside pickup. WhatsApp our certified pharmacist at 662-8769 with your requests. For prescriptions, take a clear photograph and send for review. We will engage you in dialogue and then provide a quotation and link for payment. You can then pay via TDC's online payment portal. And once the transaction is complete, you'll be notified that your pickup is ready. Yes, it's that easy. Send your WhatsApp message to 662-8769 to order your medications today with City Drugstore's curbside pickup service.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
It is Saturday, October 1st, 2022. It's a new month, and this is Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. And I'm your host for today, Devon Cornelius. Thank you so much for joining the program this morning. Good morning to those of you who have joined us via the radio. Of course, those of you who have also joined us via social media, the internet, on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. This morning, we will be joined by members of the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis. We will be having President Andre Huey and Second Vice President Jermaine Abel of the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis. right, good morning, and welcome to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. I'm your host for today, Devon Cornelius. It is Saturday, October 1st, 2022. And for today's edition of Inside the News, we'll be joined by members of the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis. We have on the line with us today German Abel, who is the second vice president. And we also have the president of the association, Andre Huey, who will be joining us later. And of course, we will be speaking all things media, things related to what is happening with the in the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis and some of the challenges that media workers in St. Kitts and Nevis are facing and continue to face. German, good morning. Are you hearing me?
Hey there, good morning.
Awesome.
Loud and clear.
Awesome, and thank you so much for joining us here on the program today. So, as I said, we're here to talk about all things media, but of course, you are the guest. Can you tell us why you're here today, German?
Yes, I can, Devon. So, everyone would have known that over the last 6-7 months or 5-6 months, thereabout, we resuscitated the association. And over that time, we would have done a number of things to not only get ourselves on firm ground, but also, we've gotten the ball rolling in terms of freedom of information and spreading the word and, providing that platform for journalists and media workers in St. Kitts and Nevis to actually, access information, basically.
Awesome. And the Media Association was here, I believe it was last week, where an update was provided on some of the work that has been done thus far. One of the things being, as you mentioned, the Freedom of Information Act. I also saw a post from the AG that the government would be working on, I think it was the Anti-Corruption Act, Integrity in Public Life Act, and the Freedom of Information Act. But definitely on the part of the Media Association, the Media Association has been working, has been doing their part to create a better working environment and a better working climate for media workers in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Jermaine?
Yes, we actually have been doing that. We've been engaging, and I know some of this would have been mentioned previously, and I was not there when the guys and gals were on Voices recently. But a lot of what we've been doing is sensitizing media houses, media owners, media practitioners of what our plans are, what our goals are, and what we're trying to achieve in terms of accessing information, the way media should be treated in general. So we've been doing a lot in terms of reaching out, and we even began public awareness campaigns so the public can also get a better understanding of what our roles and responsibilities are and the expectations. Because you and I both know, Devon, we're in this field, that the expectations are 1 million of media workers.
Yes.
Right. And that's a high expectation. One, for the environment that we're in, and two, for the limited resources that we have to chase after stories. So realistically, we are out there educating. So it's not that expectations shouldn't be high for us, but the issue is, people have a misunderstanding, misconception of what we do and how we go about doing what we do.
I have faced that, German, and also there continues to be a really high expectation in the sense that people, are calling for more and continue to call for more from media workers, in particular journalists, reporters, saying that our journalists and reporters have to be more active or proactive, have to, continue to speak the facts, continue to report on the the facts. And absolutely, I think this
Yeah,
is something that
it's
we have been doing.
it's an interesting fact that of what you mentioned there, and what we have, and you, for example, would know that one of the mandates that we have as an association is that we are actually in the process of training and upgrading the skill set of journalists and the young reporters and everybody, even those seasoned ones, are attending, to update their skill set when it comes to getting their work done. Because, I mean, you may have done something or would have done a training session or would have finished university 5, 6 years, but then the field and the way journalism is done has actually been moving the cycle. It's like a phone, every
Yes,
year, every 6 months, you see you have to
something
change a
new.
device. Apple keep turning out their products month after month. So we in ourselves have to keep upgrading. So what we would have been doing over that time is we've actually held training sessions. We partner with sessions. So we our journalists in St. Kitts and Nevis can actually be able to keep abreast with the moving trends, and that in and of itself would assist us in meeting some of the expectations that has been outlined, or what people are expecting of us in the media realm of things.
Hmm. And German, I am really happy to have been part of some of those training opportunities, because as you say, the expectation is really high, and people expect a lot from media workers, in particular reporters and journalists. And I believe it is the access to the training, and I would implore and encourage like other media workers to take advantage of these opportunities. I mean, at times it is challenging to participate in all of these training sessions because having to having to attend and still having to manage your work schedule and your workload is as you would know, job is difficult. But opportunities are like these are really, really important. And if we are to continue to do our work and do our work to the best of our ability, we would need the necessary skills and resources to do that. And these training opportunities,
Okay.
I think, are providing that.
Okay, yeah. But just let me apologize if you guys hear noise. I'm in a busy environment.
That's
But
okay.
I think, let me first backpedal. When a group of us got together to resuscitate the association, we found a number of issues and matters that needed to be addressed. And a couple of them I can think of off the bat, Devon, and you also would know. One has to do with accessing information. I think that's like the biggest issue that we have, whether or not it's the current administration, the previous administration, the one before that, or the one before that. And even in some statutory and other agencies, accessing information is like pulling feet, right? And when you're asking people for information that's available, and they're telling you they don't think the public needs to know this information, or this is not something that the public would want to know about, that's one of the issues. And then you have the fact that a lot of young people are now coming into the profession, right? The skill set of those people need to be upgraded. It's one thing for you to go to university to study, but applying some of what you've learned in the real world, oftentimes it's different. So I can tell you 101 is two, but then I find another way just by working on my experience that this is the way you can do the math. Right. So real world application is some of what is missing. So when we thought about these two issues, for example, we recognize, hey, when we come together as a body, we can prioritize addressing these key issues, right? The accessing information. But then when we look, there are other issues that came about as well. So the general idea is, once we could address these issues, then we can go forward and lift the standard of journalism in St. Kitts and Nevis. But then when you lift the standard, your expectation goes higher, or the people's expectation could be
Right.
goes higher. And that's where the issue comes. Right. So it's I think for me, it's the public education and getting them to understand all of what the role we play and some of the issues and challenges. I mean, we could take the next 3-4 hours, discussing issues and all of that. But we came about as an association to address some of the major challenges that media and the media landscape in St. Kitts and Nevis is facing. And is it easy? No. Would all of them be addressed at the same time? No, but we've set ourselves small targets that we can address some of these issues. And we even want the public in general, if you have an issue with somebody or you think somebody crossed the line, you can reach out to us. We can discuss those and, we can see how best we can lift the standard. It's not just about criticizing Mr. Abel because he wrote a story that isn't aligned with the government or with the opposition. That you're going to public domain and you chastise him for each. And this is one of the things that I think the public needs to understand. Each organization has its own editorial policy. What might pass through WINN FM might not pass through another agency.
Right.
What might pass through the agency that Mr. Abel works with might not pass through another agency. So those are some of the dynamics that you have to take into consideration when you look at the media landscape in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Gentlemen, it is 11:22. Let's take a short break to give a shout out to our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll continue the program for today. Let's take this break, and we will be right back.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. WINN FM.
People make the world go round.
TDC Financial Services. We're here for you to help you make your dreams come true. Whether your needs are big or small, we'll support you with them all. TDC Financial Services. We are strong. TDC Financial Services. This is where you belong.
TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects or sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
Welcome back to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. It's 25 minutes past the hour. German, good morning again. Are you hearing me clearly, right?
Yeah, I'm hearing you, Devon.
Okay, awesome. So we're continuing where we left off from German. We'll be taking some calls later today. Let me just give out the numbers. 466-0989, 762-0989, or 662-0989. We'll be taking your calls later. German, we were on, I think I lost track of where we were on, but I wanted to bring up the point about, there was a comment that you made in regards to reporters, doing your work. At times there are people who are going to be in favor of what you're doing, and there are others who are not going to be, so much in favor of what you're doing. Maybe, you come at a point where you perhaps published a story that was not, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's a story that is not popular in the sense that not what everybody wants to hear about, but this is the facts. You're speaking the facts. You are reporting what it is, but it's not a story that is in line with the government or with the powers that be. How do you deal with something like that? That's my question.
In layman's terms, Devon, I would say you have to grow a thick skin, right? And when you're doing this business, like me, I've been doing it for quite some time. I've grown a thick skin to criticism. But you know, as an editor once told me, or a boss once told me, once you are being criticized for what you're doing, then you're doing your job, right? Once both sides of the coin can say that you're doing madness, then you're doing your job. Because when you're publishing facts, nobody will like the facts that you publish. That's hands down, whether or not they're in government or they're out of government. People don't like the facts. So what you would find in various environments, and syndicates is not, you can't just brush syndicates alone.
Right,
A lot
right.
of environments across the region, you would find that people will give you a hard time because they don't want the facts to come out. Right. And then when the facts come out, you're being branded as the disturber in chief, or the chief who causing an uproar. But you know all the terms. But for me personally, I always believe that once you do your job, nobody's supposed to like you. You're not supposed to be loved. Because if you're doing a story and it's heavily criticizing the opposition, the government and their supporters will definitely love you. You'd be the best report. You'd be referred to as the best report in the country, right?
Yeah.
But then when the shoe's on the other foot, or you're bringing down the government, you're looking to create mischief and all of that. So I think it's about experience, and it comes with experience. Because when I first started as well, Devon, trust me, you wrote a story, you'd go home and cry with the level of criticism that you'll get.
Yeah.
But as you grow in it, you would recognize that, hey, I'm just doing my job, and I'm doing it based on the definition of what I'm doing. Right. And nobody will like you for doing that. I mean, when you look at the investigative pieces that people will do, people have been calling, oh, you guys don't do enough investigative work. But if we begin to do the definition of investigative work, right, a lot of people would be protesting in the streets, right? But it's just that we don't have the level of legislation in place that would
Resources,
allow
protection, all that.
for all of these things. Exactly. So that would be the challenge that people would face, right? And even us, we would get backlashes, But are we prepared as journalists? Are we prepared for something like that? And like I said earlier, we have a lot of young people who are now coming into the field who don't have that level of experience, whether in investigative reporting or anything. So it's not something that you will be loved for. You have to be in it for you loving the job and prepare yourself for criticisms.
Absolutely. And Jermaine, since my time being in this field, of course, I have had my share of criticism. I mean, people are going to, as you say, they're going to, commend you at one point in time, and then the other time they're going to criticize, which is absolutely fine, welcoming the criticism, the constructive criticism, using it as, an opportunity to do better, to improve on your mistakes. But there are people, as we discussed, they're going to one day love you, the other day hate you, and that is just the reality of how it is. I mean, when you look at reporters across the Caribbean, as you mentioned, investigative pieces, German. This is something that a number of people continue to call for. When in just regular conversation with people often say, reporters, journalists in the country. You guys have to do more investigative pieces to, uncover corruption and other things happening in society. Presenting the facts.
Yeah,
The
but
issue.
Devon, you see,
Yeah, but I
the
mean, the
issue
issue
it
with.
really and truly
Go
is
ahead.
when people, I love when people call for that, right? But they also have to take into account reality. I guess all the discussions we probably had on this radio station, there's one central theme coming out of it: the lack of resources.
Right.
The lack of resources. Everybody's short staff. Nobody is going to say, Devon comes to me as the editor to say, hey, German, I have a story here that I'm chasing, right? But it will require me to be doing investigative work for 6 months. 6 months. Who's going to pay Devon to be doing one investigative piece for 6 months? People don't understand the realistic background to what they're calling for. Right, a report might take 1 month to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I was doing a piece recently, and we only wrapped up. That was an 18-month project, and that only wrapped up last month. So you understand the level of work that goes into it. So when people say, "Oh, we need more investigative work," yes, but investigative work is one thing. Are people willing to speak? That's the other issue. We don't have access to documents. We don't have access to information. So it just makes our work much more difficult. We don't even have whistleblower legislation, for example. That in and of itself would assist in having a lot of this investigative work be completed. Somebody may say, German picked up the phone and called Devon. Devon, I need you to comment on this. Devon is refusing to comment on it, but when a reporter or a major international agency from the US, the UK, Canada decides to call Devon, Devon sees this as an opportunity for public relations for him. So he's going to speak to that agency. So we're not going to get access to him, but an international agency is there, and he's more going to provide the information to that agency because he wants to look good in the international community. But locally, he's like, oh, you guys know, Devon has an agenda, German has an agenda. It's not that we have an agenda, it's just that we are looking for the facts, and the facts is not always going to be quote unquote sexy. It's not always going to be rose. It's not always going to paint you in a good light. But the people need to know the facts. But you see, the other end of it also is the public willing to accept findings from these investigative work? Because if German is running for office and it's making him look bad, his supporters are going to say, you guys are just being malicious. But it's not you being malicious.
But German, you made the point earlier that when you do a story on the government, supporters of the opposition, supporters of opposition will be like, yes, that's really good. You're reporting the facts, you're reporting and uncovering corruption. But when it changes, when you have to report on the government, you would be, as you say, deemed as the what's the term that you used earlier? But basically trying to bring down the government.
Antagonist.
So that is how it is, sadly. But reporting the facts and continuing to do what we have to do is really important.
I mean, you're correct. And I think it has to do with the fact that the environment in and of itself is slowly maturing to the point that it can accept certain things, the media landscape. So, I was having a discussion recently with someone, and they even pointed out to me that, hey, I think what was needed is a lot of public education so that the people can understand the role and what is the major focus for the media. It's not always about Devon built a road, but isn't that why we pay taxes? Isn't that why we pay social levy and all these other stuff? So you understand that it's not just about building roads, but it's generally about why did it take you so long to build a road here? Did you prioritize other things over building a road? Why did you decide to build a road as against spending $10 million to upgrade a hospital or upgrade a school? So it's all of that. So, I mean, people would say, oh, then what's the purpose of a place like SKNS? SKNS is government information service. They send that out. But the private and the mainstream media, our job is generally to dig deeper and bring the facts to the people. And I think, and again, I said, we have a lot of people who are still learning the environment and what is needed, right? And because we are so short-staffed and we have a lot of constraints and we have deadlines, tight deadlines, it's not something that is easily done. I was in discussion with a gentleman, and he was suggesting also that we need more. We need to do more investigative work, but realistically, it's possible, but you would not always get investigative work 7 days a week presented in the newscast or published online or in the newspapers.
Right. Gentlemen, we were just joined by Andre Huey. Andre Huey is here, the president of the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis. Andre, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Devon. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Guys, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue the program for today, all right? Let's take this break, and I'll be right back.
Found the sound 98.9 WINN FM. WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is WINN FM.
People make the world go round.
If you need protection, you need one who you can trust. To secure your investment, you need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us.
TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind.
You're always safe with us.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go round.
Welcome back to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. It is 11:40. We have on the panel today the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis, President Andre Huey, and Second Vice President Mr. Jermaine Evil. Andre, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. Jermaine and I, we were on the subtopic of some of the challenges that media workers face, specifically St. Kitts and Nevis, but media workers across the board. Can we get your 2 cents on that?
Well, I've been listening to the discussion while on my way here. Well, there are many challenges across the board here in St. Kitts and Nevis. If we were to look at, I think Jermaine mentioned most of them. I know that persons have always asked for the media to do more, and I think in many respects, their request is not an unfair one. It's not unwarranted, because I do believe that the media can do more.
Yes.
But there are, of course, constraints that we have to consider. And what we want to do as a media association is how much we can mitigate those constraints and to improve the work of media in St. Kitts and Nevis. Some of those things are going to take time. They're systemic. It's something that's part of just the way things are. And Jermaine talked about lack of resources. That's a major, major problem. And it's not something that, it's not like, media companies decide, well, we're not going to invest in our newsrooms, and we're not going to make the kind of investments that will help us to do our jobs better. Many times they just can't. And they can't because if you look at the business model of media outlets, it relies heavily on advertising. And advertising comes from the business community. Now, in St. Kitts and Nevis, unlike many of our other Caribbean neighbors, we have a small economies of scale. You have less businesses to get advertising from. Then if you throw in the other factor of social media, and in the last 10 years, for example, how social media has not only given more people more access to express themselves from a media standpoint, but they've also made advertising easier and cheaper in many respects. And so you find a lot of businesses are now turning to social media.
Social media.
Primarily, I don't personally believe that you can just use social media to promote your business because, truth be told, everyone is not on social media. We sometimes have this misnomer and this misconception that, once you get it out on social media, the whole world knows. That's not quite the case. I know I've come across a lot of people here in the country who don't have a Facebook page and don't intend to have one. Many have had and come off for various reasons. And more you're finding more people are moving away from social media. But it is a great tool nonetheless to promote because they are, there is a community, a large community on social media. But to stress the point of resources, social media has in many ways affected the business model of traditional media outlets because now there's another option that persons have to promote their goods and services. And like I said, more and more businesses are now they're doing that. Some of them are doing both. They're with the traditional media. They may cut back a bit on some of the traditional media advertising because it's not cheap. It's expensive when you look at it from a business standpoint.
Right.
But it's a worthy investment. And let me just make a plug. I'm making a plug on behalf of all media outlets that advertising is not an expense. If you're a serious business person that really wants to promote your business and take it to the next level, it's not an expense. It's actually an investment. Right. And it's an investment that takes a period of time. You invest in advertising, you advertise 1 month, you may not always see the outcome or the results of it. But if you're consistent with it, most experts will tell you that it takes at least 3 months of constant advertising before your message hits home. Even if you do it on social media, you have to be consistent at it. And then within 3 months or so, you begin to see the outcome of it. So that is one of the challenges. And of course, with COVID-19 pandemic, when it hit in 2020, I think that also hurt a lot of media businesses. I know of colleagues across the Caribbean who've lost their jobs. And I really applaud the media outlets here in St. Kitts and Nevis that remained open. I have not heard of any, at least, that have closed their doors or have had a massive layoff of staff as a result of COVID. So, and I believe many of them are doing it under duress, but they see the need to maintain the operation. So it's a major, major challenge. So from that standpoint, if media outlets are not able to make the necessary investments into their business to expand their newsrooms and really have a robust newsroom that eventually translates into good journalism, then you're going to have that as a challenge. However, where I think the Media Association can play a role, we are members of the Association of Caribbean Media Workers. And the ACM, I must say, has been doing a fantastic job in helping media outlets, journalists and media workers across the Caribbean. One, in training. They have done a good job in training. They have brought a lot of training opportunities to journalists across the region. And through the Media Association of St. Kitts Nevis, we intend to bring more training opportunities to our journalists. Some of us have already done so. Even before the association was active, have been participating in some of these trainings. Right. Now that we have an active association, it is our expectation that more training opportunities will be available free of cost to the media workers, to our members. And I have to stress that point because training is not cheap. It is not free. It might be free to us, but it costs somewhere. Right. And like I said, the ACM, through its training arm, the Media Institute of the Caribbean, they've done a fantastic job in bringing at least 4 to 5 training opportunities each year, or maybe more, to journalists across the Caribbean at no cost to the journalists. These trainings have been conducted virtually in many cases. They have one that's coming up that's going to be face-to-face in Trinidad later this month. And again, when you factor in that journalists are traveling from all over the Caribbean to attend this, that is also not cheap. So again, kudos to MIC and ACM for making those opportunities. That's one. So you're getting training opportunities. That can also help. The way in which we also see that we could help is to, and this is not something we're going to do this year, but we have discussed it in conjunction, and possibly in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce, where we will see how best we can help businesses from a business standpoint in terms of their business model, how they can adapt to the changes around them to make their business more effective and probably earn more revenues as a result. Because media outlets now they have to be creative. It's no longer people are going to naturally come to us to spend money to advertise. Like I said earlier, they're finding social media now as an alternative, and they're finding other alternatives. So we have to also, as media people, adapt with the times and be creative. And so we're hoping that we can provide outlets in which we can guide our media professionals, particularly the managers and owners, how to be creative in dealing with the challenges. Because at the end of the day, the work we do is very important. Whether people feel we need to do more or not, it is very, very important. But it also comes at a cost. Somebody has to pay for it. The news is done here on WINN FM, for example. It's free. People can turn on the radio, they can tune in online, they can watch on social media. But it costs money to put that newscast together. Every newscast costs money. Who is paying for it? So the media outlets, of course, if they want to stay in business, have to find creative ways in which they can adapt to the realities and at the same time provide the service to the public. So it's a catch-22. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. But as an association, we have some time on our hands in terms of our term, and we're hoping that within that term we can, among other things, help achieve this.
All right, it is 11:48, and you're listening to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. The phone lines are open, and we're taking your calls at 466-0989, 762-0989, or 662-0989. I had a question, Andre, that I wanted to get your comment on, and this is something that people have asked before in terms of how do media outlets deal with businesses or prominent or influential people in the community who may be a sponsor for your media outlet, and you ending up having to do a story on that organization or business space. How do you deal with something like that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think many media outlets have come across that. Every media house, I think, deals with it differently. I don't think there's a set way or rule book that says this is how you should deal with it. This is what I think is the best way, though, I would suggest. Well, first of all, as a media entity, it's a catch-22. You have to, if you're going to remain an independent outlet, report on whatever the issue is. But at the same time, you value the business of that client. You value the business of that entity that supports you as a media outlet. And again, going back to what I said earlier, especially when the advertising dollar is scarce, when you have clients, you want to keep them. You don't want to do something that will turn them away from you. So obviously, you're faced with that dilemma. I believe that once you approach the story in a fair and balanced way, and that is key. A lot of times we report on a story, but you should ask the question: is the story fair? I know some media practitioners don't really believe in quote unquote balance. We get the thing about balance. Who determines balance? It might balance to you from your perspective, but from someone else's perspective, they might consider it, not a balanced story. But I think it's a matter of being fair, and fair meaning you give all sides to the story. You allow the entity in question, give them the opportunity to respond to the story. Now, some entities, of course, they may take a standoffish approach. They might well, I'm not going to respond to that. One of the things I've noticed here, for example, is that, if you don't comment on it, then it will just die away and go. So they will just stay silent. From a PR perspective, that's not a good approach either. So you don't want to let something fester and not respond to it. Get ahead of it. So yeah, I would say, any outlet, any media company faced with that dilemma, they should provide a fair aspect or fair approach to reporting on that story. Give all sides of the story. Give everybody an opportunity to respond. If they choose not to respond, and I remember having this debate there was a story we ran early this year on SK Newsline that ruffled some feathers with the business community, with one section of the business that was in question. And we were approached about the story, and the question was, should we have ran with the story if we didn't get the other side? And the response was, the other side was not in a position to respond at the time. So do we hold the story and wait until the other side is available and ready to speak? Because sometimes that is used as a tactic to, try to kill the story. If you don't get the response, then you can't run the story, and you're waiting for the response doesn't come, and then the issue remains. Especially if it's a public of public concern. So those are questions that you always have to ask yourself. Are you being fair to the parties involved? Eventually, the issue we were informed was fixed, and the story, of course, played a role in that regard, because the story brought the matter to public attention, and as such, the matter was addressed even before we actually got a response from the company involved. So again, you have to weigh in the balance. What is your objective? What are you trying to achieve? And you take a fair and balanced approach to it. So that's the best way, I think. Of course, you won't always please everybody, and in this business, unfortunately, or fortunately, it depends on how you look at it. It's not your job really to please people.
Absolutely.
You will please some and you will anger some. But at the end of the day, you just have to do what you have to do.
That is so true. That is so true. We had some callers on the line. Please call us back at 466-0989, 762-0989, or 662-0989. The phone lines are open, and we are taking your calls. Of course, you break at 12 for the headline news, and when we come back, we'll continue the program for today. Call us at 466-0989, 762-0989, or 662-0989. But Andre, you said it nicely. Those are some of the challenges and difficulties that media workers have to face here in St. Kitts and Nevis, across the Caribbean, or generally across the board. And so it is not just simply, showing up today on a Monday morning and just reporting the news. There's a lot that goes into it. Not, trying to provide an excuse or anything. And as you said earlier, there are people who have been calling for the media to do more, and they're saying it from a very fair standpoint. They want to see more investigative pieces. They want to see more, the quality or the standard, increase, which I wholeheartedly agree with. But this is dependent on the training opportunities and media workers taking advantage of these training opportunities. I mean, not all the time you would be able to get involved in these opportunities, of course, because of your work schedule. You may have a number of things to take care of, but definitely there are opportunities out there, and I am encouraging media workers to really take advantage. Jermaine, are you still on the line with us?
Still here.
Okay. All right. Guys, it is 5 minutes to the hour. We had some callers, we lost them. So the phone lines are still open, and we are going to take at least 2 calls before we break for the headline news. You wanted to add anything else before we do that?
Yeah, while we're waiting for the calls, sure. I just wanted to make the point, too, that, again, as I said earlier, I think some of the comments and the criticisms are fair. Yes, of course, even us in the media fraternity believe we would love to see more done. And I could use examples of where Jermaine and I have worked on projects, intra-regional projects on investigative journalism. He's actually worked on some. I think he's probably working on some as we speak. I did one earlier this year, which I spoke about, I think, when I was here the last time, which took us about maybe 4 months to do. At the end of the day, though, when we look back at the story and the reporting of it, and even the critique of the story from international media outlets, international media bodies, we've gotten some feedback. For example, our mentor, Kiran Maharaj, who is the president of the Media Institute of the Caribbean, she gave us some feedback she's gotten from media entities outside of international media entities in the US and other places. And they were very impressed with the work that a group of Caribbean journalists did reporting on an issue. At the time, it was the CBI program, reporting on an issue that is pertinent to the region, pertinent to us here in St. Kitts Nevis. And it was very comprehensive. And that was the kind of feedback we were getting.
Andre, stick up in. We have a call on the line. Let's take this call. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Oh, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I think I'm a member of the Media Association. No, because knowledge is power. And gossip. Let me close it. Let me try and get this point. All right. So what I'm saying, now, this one is addressed to Andre. Now, the other day I heard a news item that said that your business, Scan News, was asked to apologize or whatever.
My business?
Yeah, I heard somebody trying to sue you.
No, not at all. We've never had any such thing.
It was in the news on a radio station, don't remember which one. Some gentleman who you said was involved in a matter.
Are you sure it's SK Newsline? Or maybe it was another outlet. There's another website called SK News, I think it's called.
Oh, well,
SKnews.com. It's probably, No, we never had such thing, actually.
So I wanted to know, in terms of your association, do you all have a legal fund?
No.
You all thought about it?
No, because we're actually utilizing the model that the ACM has. The ACM doesn't represent or doesn't provide funding for defamation matters. They've actually stayed away from that. What they've done...
But you don't think they should?
No. Well, let me explain why. And I'll explain what they've explained to me and why we're adopting that model. What they've basically explained is that usually defamation matters are matters pertaining to specific media houses and the complainant. And they usually don't get involved in that. What they've done, though, is that they provide legal assistance in terms of, let's say, for example, if there's a matter that comes up and the journalist in question or the media house in question needs some legal advice, they have people who they can call on who can provide that legal advice to the respective person. So in our case, that is basically the model we have adopted, in the sense that if there's an issue that comes up and there's an entity that is being sued for defamation, we can provide advice to and recommendations to the media house in question, and even maybe recommend if the matter goes to court, maybe even make a recommendation as to who could represent them. But in terms of
question I have.
Yeah.
Yes, because
do you have are you unionized?
No.
So that you can represent the journalists or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes they may have.
I'm glad you asked that question. Yes, go ahead, Jeremy.
That's an issue that.
Okay, thank you, caller.
Yeah, sorry. I think that's an issue that we needed to, to get people to understand clearly that it's not a union.
Right.
And we represent the interests of, and we lobby on behalf of, right? Because that was the same question that kept coming up. Right. It's going to be a ticklish thing when you cross that line. And you then become a full-fledged entity that's representing, and you're working full-time on behalf of.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So
we lobby, but to the broader point, though, the guidelines and policy statements and all of these things that we would have put out there to everybody, once you follow those, you're not necessarily going to cross that line of defamation and all of that. So.
And not only that too, if I may add, one of the things that we are going to do, one of the training workshops we're going to do, possibly not this year, but in the coming year, is on defamation, because we realize that is an issue, not just for journalists here in St. Kitts Nevis, but right across the Caribbean. And our laws are not friendly when it comes to that. So we want to be able to educate our journalists on the issue of defamation. What are the do's, what are the don'ts, and to guide them along those lines. But yes, Jeremy made that very valid point. We're not a labor union. While we represent the interests of media workers, providing training and opportunities and improvement, we're more like a developmental association in terms of developing our members and represent their interests where possible. But when it comes to labor matters, that's a whole other story.
Guys, we're at the top of the hour for the headline news. Can I get your closing comments, and we'll take the break for the headline news.
All right. Well, again, thanks, Devon, for the opportunity. The Media Association, we've launched out on our media campaign to educate the public on what we have been doing, and we're also looking at ways in which we can inform the public on the role of the media. So we're happy that we're here, that you've allowed us to be here today, and we certainly have been making some inroads since we've started. So the public, of course, will hear from us. There are some things on the horizons that they'll be hearing more about, and you'll be seeing and hearing more of the Media Association.
All right, thank you so much, Andre. German?
Well, I think Andre summed it up. We're just here, and just for people to give us an opportunity to do what we're doing and to continue to live the standard of the profession. That's most of it for now.
All right, thank you guys so much. We'll take this break for the headline news, and when we come back, we'll continue inside the news here on WINN FM 98.9. Let's take this break, and we'll be right back.
You found the sound. 98.9. WINN FM.
We now bring you the headline news. The headline news is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, The Grange, KDP Enterprises, Carib Brewery, and the ICDF Taiwan Technical Mission.
Think before you bin it. There can be some use in it. The St. Kitts and Nevis Solid Waste Management, in collaboration with Taiwan ICDF Technical Mission and the Department of Environment, presents Let's Recycle. We are encouraging all residential homes, commercial businesses, and schools to bring along your plastic bottles, metal cans, and aluminum cans, ready for an opportunity to win big. From 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every second and fourth Tuesday each month at the following locations in St. Kitts: the Connery Roundabout, every first and third Tuesday at Buckley's parking lot in front of Best Buy, and the last Saturday of each month in Deep Bay. In Nevis, every second and fourth Friday of each month at Delta Petroleum, Ex-Petrol in Camps, Big Six in Gingerland, and Old Artisan Village in Charlestown. But wait, that's not all. 1 pound equals 1 point. So bring your recyclables and build up your points for a chance to win stainless steel thermal bottle, flatware set, and much more. To learn more about the recycling project, do visit our Facebook page at Let's Recycle in St. Kitts and Nevis, or contact us at 465-2372. The choice is yours. Save it or waste it. You are the difference. Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Till you walk with a local reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we've got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. D.L. Walwyn, people you can trust.
With over a century of perfection behind the Mackeson name, a smooth blend with perfect balance and richness, it's no wonder Mackeson Triple Stout has a legacy of perfection. Enjoy the world over. Introducing our new look with the same great taste. Mackeson. All hail the king.
Please drink responsibly.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive representative on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world, whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous. You can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air, we get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises at 466-9595.
With the WINN Headline News, I am Kevon Brown.
And I am Devon Cornelius.
Making the headlines.
Minister of Social Development delivers address on the occasion of International Day of Older Persons.
Barbados set to be first country in a new IMF pilot financing program geared towards tackling climate change issues. The Freedom Coalition in St. Lucia is demanding the removal of COVID-19 mask requirements across all sectors. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said the country remains determined to liberate all of its territory after Russian President Vladimir Putin declared the annexation of 4 occupied regions. Russia has blocked a United Nations Security Council resolution condemning the annexation by using its veto power. India and China, who chose to abstain, have called for a negotiated way out of the war. Now, the details.
A number of activities are being planned to commemorate this year's International Day of Older Persons, which is being celebrated under the theme Resilience of Older Persons in a Changing World. In an address on October 1st, 2022, Junior Minister of Social Development, Gender Affairs, Aging and Disabilities, the Honorable Iseline Phillip, listed some of the activities being planned.
As we commemorate this international observance for older persons, I'd like to acknowledge and appreciate the 10 centenarians who are alive and well residing in our federation today. Specifically, we have 6 in St. Kitts and 4 in Nevis. I think that having this number of centenarians among us is a testament to the strength and fortitude of our identity and heritage as Kittitians and Nevisians. As an extension of this year's theme, Resilience of Older Persons in a Changing World, the contribution and resilience of older women is also being recognized, particularly since statistics indicate that the majority of persons 62 and older are female. This is evident even when it comes to our 10 local centenarians, whereby 70% of our oldest citizens are women. To kick things off, a special Thanksgiving service was held. Other activities will include video media appreciation campaigns, fun games and cooking activities, and package distributions. For the incalculable contributions of older persons 62 and over, who have toiled unrelentingly to lay the foundation of our society and who have sustained our growth for the past 2 generations, I'd like to say thank you. And I encourage each of us to use this month of October to celebrate the older persons who we know and care for in our homes and communities.
Minister Phillips said the government is committed to building on the existing elderly care services.
Strategic plans for this new thrust include the establishment of an Elderly and Disability Services Unit, the drafting of legislation for the prevention of elderly abuse, reinstatement of the Golden Years Club, as well as staff training and recruitment of an additional cohort of home care officers to pilot a new elderly daycare program in different communities. Since 2020, persons aged 62 and older were forecast to outnumber children under the age of 5. According to the United Nations, over the next 3 decades, the number of older persons worldwide is projected to be more than double reaching more than 1.5 billion persons in 2050. These statistics reflect the need for strategic thinking and investment in the future of older citizens as they age and require care assistance and social supports. This is another reason that greater focus is being placed on aging and elderly care under this government administration.
Junior Minister of Social Development, Aging and Disabilities, Junior Minister of Social Development, Gender Affairs, Aging and Disabilities, the Honorable Iselin Phillip. Minister of Social Development in the Nevis Island Administration, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, delivered a similar address.
In regional news, Barbados set to be first country in a new IMF pilot financing program geared towards tackling climate change issues. The Virgin Islands Consortium has the details.
Barbados will be the first country to take part in a new pilot financing program from the International Monetary Fund. The IMF, via a press release on Wednesday, announced that Barbados was the first to arrive at a staff-level agreement with the agency to gain access to the fund's Resilience and Sustainability Trust, the RST, which is aimed at making available affordable long-term financing to tackle climate change issues. The financial deal, amounting to $293 million, will go towards building Barbados's resilience against climate change and to put a structural reform plan in place. The IMF says countries applying for financing under the fund will need to have in place a, quote, concurrent financing or non-financing IMF-supported program. Having met that criteria and received approval by IMF's executive board, Barbados will not only be able to access $183 million under the RST, but also an additional $110 million under a 3-year extended fund facility that is supposed to preserve and reinforce macroeconomic stability. The agreement with the IMF comes after an 8-day mission to Barbados by a team from the International Monetary Fund for discussions on the RST. Team leader Bert Van Selm says that the combined RST and EFF funds should also assist with the reduction of the country's public debt while boosting growth. Van Selm indicated that Barbados's reforms under the RSF would include, quote, the mainstreaming of climate change in the national budget and enhancement of risk management, including for the financial sector. Van Selm is also expecting the country to introduce green public financial management to include procurement practices and to adopt measures to encourage the private sector to invest in renewable energy and climate-resilient infrastructure. The measures, said Van Selm, would be closely coordinated with the World Bank and other international partners. Despite Barbados's struggles with high public debt, exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and inflation, along with the increase in global fuel costs in 2021, Van Selm says that the country has been performing well given its challenges, progressively implementing its economic recovery and transformation plan and executing major structural reforms, including new legislation governing the country's central bank.
The Freedom Coalition in St. Lucia is demanding the removal of COVID-19 mask requirements across all sectors. DBS St. Lucia has more.
While Freedom Coalition St. Lucia agrees that the easing of the COVID-19 protocols was long overdue, the group, however, is disappointed that the total removal of protocols was not adopted by the government instead. President Fremont Lawrence, in a letter to the Health Minister Moses Jean-Baptiste, expressed concern that new measures granted business establishments the right to enforce mask wearing and other measures at their discretion.
We know that at government offices, various government departments, you go there and you see many staff not wearing masks, or they have the mask beneath their noses. So we believe that the decision by the government to allow the private sector to determine how they wish to handle the mask situation is an abdication of their responsibility to dictate how this thing would be handled.
Education Minister Sean Edward was also copied in the letter as the group condemned the Health Ministry's promotion of the vaccination of children against COVID-19.
In certain situations, they are being asked to wear masks, and we believe, and the science definitely supports that children are least likely to contract the COVID. They have a very robust system, and that wearing masks during the day is actually inimical to the health because you're taking in the carbon dioxide, and again, the research is showing that. So we're wondering what science is the government following? What science is the medical establishment advising the government on?
The Freedom Coalition has also called on the Health Ministry to release a consignment of ivermectin and permit its use for the treatment of COVID-19. According to Lawrence, the decision by the ministry to withhold the release of ivermectin as a repurposed drug constitutes medical overreach. The Freedom Coalition, he says, will continue to be vigilant regarding any plan to scare citizens into, quote, draconian measures under the pretext of following the science, end quote.
Dr. Centrioles treated 400 people with ivermectin, and none of these people have reported any adverse effects. So why is the medical establishment continuing to deny Dr. Centrioles and other doctors the use of ivermectin, which has been recommended by the WHO itself as a drug that should be in the arsenal of every doctor? So where is the science? What science are they following? And so as far as we're concerned, the credibility and integrity of the establishment has been seriously compromised. And they will have some work to do in terms of restoring the confidence of the public in the medical establishment. And they have not. They have not, since this whole thing, indicated when there is going to be a post-mortem of how this whole thing was handled. Because there are lessons to be learned. Things were done that were done badly, and this is being recognized around the world.
In announcing the updated protocols, Health Minister Moses Jabatis had indicated that the government reviewed all aspects of the current protocols in order to bring normalcy to everyday activities, while at the same time protecting the health and well-being of the nation. For the DBS News World, I am Zane Romulus.
We now bring you these international reports.
President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukraine remains determined to liberate all of its territory, despite Vladimir Putin's declaration that 4 occupied regions are now part of Russia. In his nightly address, Mr. Zelensky said the path for his nation was difficult but clear, and he was confident of victory. In a signing ceremony at the Kremlin on Friday, Mr. Putin announced that Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson were being absorbed into Russia. The announcement follows discredited referendums staged by Moscow and enforced by its soldiers. President Zelensky says the Ukrainian army is making significant progress in the east, where the Russian-held city of Liman is reported to be almost encircled. He added that his country has also applied to join NATO.
Де-факто ми вже пройшли свій шлях в НАТО. Де-факто ми вже довели
De facto, we have already completed our path to NATO. De facto, we have already proven interoperability with the alliance's standards. They are real for Ukraine, real on the battlefield, and in all aspects of our interaction. We trust each other, we help each other, and we protect each other. This is what the alliance is. De facto, today Ukraine is applying to make it de jure, under a procedure consistent with our significance for the protection of our entire community, under an accelerated procedure. We know it's possible. We have seen Finland and Sweden start accession to the alliance this year without a membership action plan. This is fair. This is also fair for Ukraine.
Справедливо. Справедливо і для України.
Well, our correspondent Hugo Bachega has been following developments from Kyiv.
Well, the Ukrainians are saying that this changes anything, that everything that happened in Moscow yesterday was a farce, that the announcements have no legal value, no legitimacy, and they say they're going ahead with the offensive to retake towns and villages that are now under Russian occupation. And those 4 regions of Ukraine, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson, are only partially occupied by the Russians, and fighting continues. And in the last hour, we had a military spokesperson saying that the Ukrainian forces have now encircled the strategically important city of Liman in the Donetsk region. This is a major hub for the Russians to resupply their troops in the east of the country. So now it seems that the Ukrainians have now managed to encircle this town, the town of Liman, with thousands of Russian troops now completely cut off. And if they manage to retake retake this city, it is going to be a major victory for the Ukrainians. And this is happening obviously just hours after that announcement by President Putin that Russia was going ahead with the annexation of these 4 regions of Ukraine, an announcement that has been rejected by the Ukrainians and also by most countries around the world.
Yeah, so what impact does that have on the Ukrainians taking of Liman, given that that is in Donetsk, which Putin has said now that it's, in his view, under Russian territory, it's on Russian soil and is seen as an act of aggression?
Well, the Ukrainians say that nothing really changes. They're going ahead to retake territory that belongs to Ukraine. And they say that these announcements being made by President Putin are Moscow's reaction to recent military defeats on the battlefield. The Ukrainians feel they've got the momentum. They're going ahead with this counteroffensive. Fighting is also happening in the Kherson region, another region that has been annexed by Russia, at least in the announcement by President Putin yesterday. I think there is obviously the fear that the announcement could lead to an escalation of tensions. Russia is likely to say that these regions are now part of Russia and that any attack on those areas would be seen as an attack on Russia itself. But the Ukrainians say that these declarations don't have any kind of legal implication. And again, they're going ahead with the offensive to take back territory. And I think they're supported by most countries around the world, the international community. I think countries have rejected the announcements that were made by President Putin yesterday. More sanctions have been announced, and I think the Ukrainians enjoy support from Western countries, and they say they're going ahead with this offensive to take back territory.
And Hugo, Ukraine is reporting that the director of the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia, which is the biggest power plant in Europe, has been detained by the Russians. What details do we have on that?
So we had a statement this morning from the nuclear operator saying that the head of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant was detained by Russian forces yesterday afternoon in the city of Enerhodar in the south of the country. And they say that he was blindfolded and taken to an undisclosed location. They are now appealing to the International Atomic Energy Agency to press the Russians to release him. And for weeks we talked about tensions around this nuclear facility and fighting around this complex had raised concerns over the safety of this nuclear power station. So now another development in the crisis there, with reports that the head of this power station has been detained by Russian forces.
The resolution condemning Russia that was put before the Security Council was drawn up jointly by Albania and by the US.
In defense of all countries to have the right to be safe from invasion and annexation, we are voting yes. And in defense of the world's collective peace and security, we urge you to vote yes too. Let us show Putin the resolve of this council.
In response, Russia sounded incredulous.
Tell me, do you seriously expect Russia to consider and support such a draft? And if not, then it turns out that you are intentionally pushing us to use the right of the veto in order to then wax lyrical about the fact that Russia abuses this right.
And so when the draft resolution was put to the vote, there was no doubt how Russia would respond. It's a permanent member of the Security Council with veto power, and it used it.
Abstentions. Please raise your hands.
But it's notable that 4 other council members decided not to support the resolution and instead to abstain: China, Brazil, Gabon and India.
Escalation of rhetoric or tension is in no one's interest. It is important that pathways are found for a return to the negotiating table. Keeping in view the totality of the evolving situation, India decided to abstain on the resolution.
After the meeting, the US ambassador told reporters she'd take the issue to a vote of all 193 United Nations members in the General Assembly. Right after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, when the General Assembly voted at the beginning of March, 141 countries voted to deplore Russia's actions. Following the Security Council vote and the abstentions, some will be asking whether it's possible to reach that high watermark again. James Bayes, Al Jazeera, at the United Nations.
A few streets from Parliament, multiple right-wing think tanks occupy grand premises. Some with direct links to the Brexit campaign, others with ties to the right of the US Republican Party. The people who, for years, have been lobbying for an ultra-free market Prime Minister. Now they've found one in the form of Liz Truss. And while they applaud the government's new direction, even these ideologues are concerned.
I think to some extent they haven't fully communicated what the plan is, and that or at least what they seem to have said hasn't gotten across in the way they've intended it to get across. I think they've struggled, and they've also come in at quite a difficult time in so many ways with the war in Ukraine, the impacts of COVID. You've got all these strains on the economy. You've got massive levels of inflation, and then they've come in with quite a radical plan, and I think that spooked people.
Around the corner, another think tank founded by former Conservative Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, someone Liz Truss is often accused of modelling herself on. Similar worries abound here.
They haven't convinced the markets that there's more to their fiscal plans than just tax policy. They haven't really doubled down enough on the supply side. There's also a sense that communication, in terms of they've just done the planned tax cuts that they'd spoken about consistently on the campaign, then perhaps the markets wouldn't have reacted in the same way.
Let's not forget, of course, that these people got Liz Truss elected, but even they seem a little bit nervous. But put aside whether or not Trussonomics will lead to that all-important, elusive goal of growth, think more about how Kwasi Kwarteng's budget statement last Friday was received by the markets. And of course, we all know the pound lost a huge amount of value, interest rates went up, lenders ended up sacrificing dozens of mortgage deals, and the Bank of England made that surprise intervention worth $70 billion to prevent financial catastrophe. It's hard to imagine all of this was part of the plan. And it's precisely these things millions of traditional Conservative Party voters care about, which is why the latest opinion polls are chilling news for the government. The opposition Labour Party boasting a staggering 33-point lead over the ruling Conservatives.
If things continue as they are, it is difficult to see how Truss could be the person that fights the next election, because it would be, a suicide note from the Conservative Party. The question is who would replace her. I wouldn't be surprised if Boris Johnson comes back.
Yes, you heard it. All this uncertainty means the return of Boris Johnson isn't as far-fetched as it seems. The government, meanwhile, is backpedalling. Officials from Britain's independent fiscal watchdog, the Office for Budget Responsibility, arriving at Downing Street on Friday to deliver their verdict on the plan, something governments normally do ahead of a fiscal announcement. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, on the other hand, refused in a dash for growth and a rush to stamp Liz Truss's leadership in history. A leadership that's faltering at the first hurdle. Neve Barker, Al Jazeera, London.
You were listening to the WINN FM headline news on 98.9. Our top stories were:
Minister of Social Development delivers address on the occasion of International Day of Older Persons.
Barbados set to be first country in a new IMF pilot financing program geared towards tackling climate change issues. The Freedom Coalition in St. Lucia is demanding the removal of COVID-19 mask requirements across all sectors. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said the country remains determined to liberate all of its territory after Russian President Vladimir Putin declared the annexation of 4 occupied regions. Russia has blocked a United Nations Security Council resolution condemning the annexation by using its veto power. India and China, who chose to abstain, have called for a negotiated way out of the war. Thank you for listening.
That was the WINN FM Headline News. The Headline News is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, The Grange, KDP Enterprises, Carib Brewery, and the ICDF Taiwan Technical Mission.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world, whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous. You can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International. By land, sea or air, we get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises at 466-9595.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Tilly Wall with a low reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we've got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Delia Walwyn, people you can trust.
Think before you bin it. There can be some use in it. The Nevis Solid Waste Management Authority, in collaboration with Taiwan ICDF Technical Mission and the Department of Environment, presents Let's Recycle. We're encouraging all residential homes, commercial businesses, and schools to bring along your plastic bottles, metal cans, and aluminum cans, ready for an opportunity to win big. From 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the following locations: in Nevis, every second and fourth Friday of each month at Delta Petroleum, ex-Petrol in Camps, Big Six in Gingerland, and the Old Artisan Village in Charlestown. In St. Kitts, every second and fourth Tuesday at the Connery Roundabout, every first and third Tuesday at Buckley's parking lot in front of Best Buy, and the last Saturday of each month in Deep Bay. But wait, that's not all. 1 pound equals 1 point. So bring your recyclables and build up your points for a chance to win stainless steel thermal bottles, flatware, and much more. To learn more about the recycling project, do visit our Facebook page at Let's Recycle in St. Kitts and Nevis, or contact us at 465-2372. The choice is yours. Save it or waste it. You are the difference. So think smart. Take PAT, reduce, reuse, recycle.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. WINN FM.
People make the world go
medication is easy with City Drugstore's curbside pickup. WhatsApp our certified pharmacist at 662-8769 with your requests. For prescriptions, take a clear photograph and send for review. We will engage you in dialogue and then provide a quotation and link for payment. You can then pay via TDC's online payment portal. And once the transaction is complete, you'll be notified that your pickup is ready. Yes, it's that easy. Send your WhatsApp message to 662-8769 to order your medications today with City Drugstore's curbside pickup service.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
Welcome back to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. It is Saturday, October 1st, 2022, and I'm your host for today. We have with us today the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis, and we have in the studio President of the Association, Mr. Andre Huey. It is now 12:39, and we're going to continue the program for this afternoon. The phone lines will be open, and so you can call us at 466-0989, 762-0989, or 662-0989. Of course, you can also leave a comment on the social media pages, our Facebook page and YouTube channel, that is WINN Media SKN. All right, welcome back, Andre. So we are on the role of media workers in the Caribbean, specifically St. Kitts and Nevis, and telling us about more of the work, or some of the work that the Media Association has been doing over the past few weeks.
All right, thanks again, Devon. Let me first start, and I don't want to forget this, and something I intended to do, and I keep forgetting. But I must, on behalf of the association, thank some persons in the media who have played a very important role in getting the Media Association up and running. And we talk a lot about how much that we've revived the association because it was dormant for several years, and took some work to get it back up and running, create a new constitution, engage the media fraternity, and also engage future membership. So I must commend and first and foremost on the list, Mr. Val Henry of VH Communications. He played a very instrumental role in getting the association up and running. He worked tirelessly on the constitution. We worked together on it, and he did a lot of work on that. We also need to thank Precious Mills, the Labour spokesman. She was also part of that committee in helping us starting. She's a member of the association as well. Then we had LaShawn Dixon of the St. Kitts Nevis Observer. He also worked in getting it up, playing his role. And then, of course, the rest of that committee comprised the current some of the current executive members, myself, Jermaine Abel, Glenn Bart, Jamiela McPhail. I don't want to leave out anybody, but yeah, those are the core persons who worked on getting the association up and running, along with the persons I mentioned earlier. So I really want to thank them very much because, even though some of them are not serving on the executive, they certainly worked on getting the association up and running. In terms of, when I was here the last time, I did speak at length about what we have been doing. So what I want to do is to just single out our executive members and some of the areas that they are in charge of. So we had on the line earlier Jermaine Abel. He's our second vice president, and he's the one who kind of keeps us all in check. Sometimes when we get busy and we're doing our own work, and we seem to sometimes we don't. He makes sure that we don't lapse in some of the things that we need to do for the association, because we don't want to get back to the stage where the association returns to dormancy. So we want to keep it going. So he's very instrumental in that, and he's also spearheading the media awards, which I won't say much on this time because it's a work in progress.
Right.
But we're looking to launch a media awards for St. Kitts Nevis, and when that time comes, we will speak more about that. We have the first vice president, Mr. Glenn Bart, who was here. The last time we were here, he's spearheading the work on the freedom of information legislation. So he is sort of taking the lead on that, and he's been engaging the authorities where that is concerned on our behalf. And speaking of freedom of information, I should also mention that this weekend, actually, we're going to be having a meeting as executive with, I would have indicated the last time that we were engaging the services of an attorney who would have guided us on some of the areas that we need to look at as it relates to recommendations in the current legislation that was passed that's not fully functional. So we are going to have that meeting this weekend, and that will put us in a better position to look at areas that we would like to recommend to the government in terms of amendments. We have our General Secretary, Ms. Natasha Morris. She has been assisting with recruitment in ensuring that we reach out to those persons who have expressed interest to join. And I must say that since we've started our media tour, we've gotten interest from persons who weren't even aware that the association had restarted. And so they've expressed an interest to join. And so we've been able to get new membership as a result of our tour. So we're very happy about that. Assisting Ms. Morris is your very own here at WINN FM, Sharon Richards. She's Assistant Secretary, and she's been very instrumental in ensuring that our minutes of the various meetings are kept up to date. I've also assigned her to assist us in reaching out to insurance companies, because one of the things that we're looking to do is to have, is to at least get the possibility of getting health insurance for our members as a group. So she has been spearheading that area in reaching out to the insurance companies, and hopefully in the not too distant future, we could have something positive to report on where that is concerned. Jamiela MacPhail from Freedom FM is our communications director. So as the name suggests, she is in charge of public relations. And Mr. Devin Richardson, most people know him as Bucky Got It, is our treasurer. And so everybody has been playing their role and working in the various perspectives. So, and then just to add to, in terms of what we have been doing, as I said the last time I was here, I ran through that in length, but I'll just summarize quickly. Freedom of information is certainly on our agenda. We have been working on that, and we're going to do some work on that this weekend. Also, we've ensured that our membership receive identification cards, membership cards which serve as ID cards, which they can use while they do their work. We've also looked at contacting or trying to form partnerships with various social, not social, but civil society groups, entities in St. Kitts and Nevis, particularly the Chamber of Commerce, and we're hoping to have discussions as well where we're applicable with other groups and organizations in St. Kitts and Nevis. Training. That is high on our agenda, and I must report, and I was here the last time, I indicated that we would be launching a training program that very same day, or I think it was the day before, and we did. The very next day we launched our business and economic reporting, economic and financial reporting workshop. Right, which started last week, and of course, Javon, you were part of it, so you could speak to the value of that. But we started it last week, Thursday. We had the second one Thursday gone, and the support has been good. Interestingly, we've opened up the training to journalists and media workers in the Eastern Caribbean. So we had journalists from Grenada and from St. Lucia that were part of the last two sessions we had. We've also extended to the other OACS countries, so we expect that in the next session we will have an increase in our attendance at that workshop. Mr. Kevin Hope is the facilitator of that workshop. He has been doing a fantastic job. I have certainly learned a lot in the 2 weeks that I've done it, and I'm looking forward to the rest of it, and also the outcome, not just the workshop to say, well, we had a training workshop and we participated, but we also want to see to it that our members as well, that they would have gained something from it and actually put it to use. And now is a good time because in the next couple of weeks, the IMF and World Bank will be hosting its annual meetings. And I suspect that this year is going to be very, very important because it's the first face-to-face meetings they've had. They have these meetings every year around this time. Right, but this is the first face-to-face one they're having since COVID. So I know a lot of the pertinent, and there are so many issues, economic issues on the agenda that they will have to discuss, because you're talking about the war in Ukraine, you're talking about supply chain challenges, you're talking about post-COVID, and the impact that has had on the economies across the world. Inflation is on the rise. So we're certainly anticipating to hear what it is that organizations like the IMF and the World Bank have to say, what directives are they putting out for the member countries. So that workshop has, comes at a really opportune time.
Absolutely.
Because it is now equipping us, whether we're there physically or we're going to cover it virtually, that we will know what to look for and what questions to ask. So I'm certainly looking forward to that and putting our knowledge to good use when that time comes. And of course, later in the year, you have the budget, which is in December. So again, things that we should look for. And a lot of what we've learned in the training so far has focused on the budget. What are some of the things that you look at or you should look at? And so I expect that by the time the budget comes around, that the quality of stories, we will begin to see, even if you don't see it on a wide scale, but you will begin to see the improvement in the quality of stories that are being produced. And definitely, I would put that down to the training that we're getting so far and that we're going to complete in a matter of weeks.
Absolutely, Andre. I definitely have been enjoying the training thus far. I mean, being exposed to the different financial and economic terminologies, basically preparing reporters, journalists, to report on things like the IMF coming up and the budget in December. The point that you made last week was really important in the sense that oftentimes you may not see in-depth reports happening, in-depth news stories on budgets and different things like the IMF and so on. And so I really do foresee coming out of this workshop, those who have participated you'll be seeing something. You'll be seeing something. As a participant, I can say that.
Yeah, and I can speak for myself as well. I believe that when this workshop is done, anything that I cover personally on the economy and finance is going to be improved, vastly improved. And let me also add, while we're on that, I know a lot of talk has always come about, and a lot of the criticisms of the media here has to center along the lines of investigative journalism. But while that is important, and we shouldn't, diminish the importance of investigative journalism, I think journalism in and of its nature is investigative. Whether you're going to go in depth into a story or you're going to just report on a run-of-the-mill story, it is by nature investigative.
The simple questions of the 5 W's.
That's in and of itself is investigative. So let's use this workshop, for example, that we're a part of now. When this workshop ends, and the budget comes around, or anything else that comes around pertaining to the economy, we should be in a position where we can cover that issue more comprehensively. And it doesn't necessarily require digging up old files or, trying to, get information that it probably will, because, there's certain information you want to get that you may not be able to get unless you have an access to information law. But there are things that you can do outside of the remit of that that can allow you to cover that issue very comprehensively. So sometimes, we were looking for the deep stories. You're looking for the multi-series stories and, the long articles and, the Guardian type reporting on certain things. And again, I'm not diminishing that. That is important. We need that. That takes more time and more resources. So that's sometimes like special, reserved for special stories. But generally speaking, when you cover something like the economy and for example, which may not sound like as we say, a sexy topic for some people, it is still an important issue. And if you can cover it in such a way that you educate people, you open their eyes to certain things that they would not have looked at before, I think you would have done your job as a journalist, and a good job too. So sometimes it doesn't necessarily require all the things that we need, that we currently don't have, to make us better reporters and journalists. It just requires sometimes putting a little bit more effort, a little bit more work, and with the right training. And that is why training is so important. And that is why, as an association, we are stressing on training. That when you get that training, it will certainly help you to be a better journalist and a better media worker.
Absolutely. I do agree with you there, Andre. It is 12:51. The phone lines are open and we're taking your calls here on WINN FM 98.9 for Inside the News. Call us at 466-0989, 762-0989 or 662-0989. So, Andre, the Media Association really has been busy. The members, the executive members, have been assigned different tasks and really, have been working. And I like the fact that, things are, the Media Association is trying to remain very active. You don't want to get back to, that level of, you don't want to be dormant.
Yeah.
You don't want to be dormant, As the demand continues to grow for media workers to do more, the Media Association would have a very important and integral role to play in that part. As you say, providing the training opportunities, support, basic support for media workers, I think could go a long way. And encouraging more people to enter the field, Jim, sorry, Andre, we have a caller on the line.
No problem.
Caller, good afternoon. You're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon to you and Andre.
Yes, good afternoon.
I'm waiting for the people to call, giving them a chance, but they're not calling, so. Now, how do you relate what you're saying to state media? Because they are often their news also are slanted towards the institution for which they work, which is government, eh?
Right.
And how do we judge what is propaganda? You listen to the news and even on the television, what we call reputable media houses. And what is pure propaganda? Even in news, the war in Ukraine. One side saying this one losing, the other one saying the other one winning. And you wonder, where is the truth?
Yep.
So are they bound? So are journalists required to slant the news according to their media houses?
Very
That's
good
one question.
Yeah, very good questions. I think it really comes down to your last question. It really comes down to the policy of that newsroom or that media house. There are some companies, and we could take it international. We don't necessarily have to narrow it down to St. Kitts Nevis.
You got Fox and you got Fox,
you got Fox News, you have CNN, Al Jazeera,
and
BBC, Russia Today. And I remember some time ago I actually was on this program and I said that I actually watch Russia Today because I want to get an understanding of their perspective. I'll give you an example. Even here, when I worked at WINN FM, our editor at the time, Mr. Bacchus, every week, he would buy the Observer newspaper, the Labour Spokesman, and the Democrat, when the Democrat used to be published.
I used to do that too, when I could see. I always bought the four.
Right, and I would ask him,
looking for the truth.
And I would ask him, specifically as it pertains to the Spokesman and the Democrat, why would he buy those newspapers? Because they're political newspapers. And he basically said, he needs to know how each side is thinking on issues, because that gives him perspective in terms of how he approaches stories. So once he goes and tackles an issue, he understands the political sides, both political sides, and how they look at a certain issue. So he will read the stories, he'll read the editorials, he'll read the commentaries. They're going to be slanted to the respective parties.
Right.
But you get in from them, when reading them, you get the perspective. And then, of course, you read the Observer and you get a more balanced perspective on the issue. So, well, I guess,
I keep thinking about it, with all the training and whatever, sometimes you hear the same economy. Well, I'm an economist, and a statistician. And sometimes you listen to some analysis of the economy. I mean, even when they were having the election and everybody campaigning and they can do this and do that, and I am saying to myself, Is everyone unaware that we are facing a world recession?
Mm. No, you're right.
Making projections, and not only that, our economy is so intertwined inside of these other economies.
Mm-hmm.
We make analysis apart from the countries.
Mm-hmm.
Like I heard them saying, they're talking about the tourism. Right? You know, have this problem of disaster thing in Florida.
Yeah, that's going to have an impact.
Where the boats come from?
Yeah, Miami. Mm-hmm.
It used to be Puerto Rico mash up. Some part of Florida mash up. You know? And we're still making all kind of nice...
That is why it's important to make projections in light of, or, providing that there are no issues. Yeah, but thanks for those questions.
Consider the variables, so
yeah.
We're making these nice, glorious things.
All right, we'll call it. Thank you so much for your contribution.
All right, thank you.
You want to
I was going to make the point that, the caller raised some interesting points. Let me go back to the issue that was the second question, which has to do with the propaganda, or even before we get to that.
Yeah.
Again, it's up to the policy of the media house. And some of them you will know because they make no bones in making know that this is what they do. So she listed, for example, Fox News, you have, which leans more conservative, the issues that they talk about, or the discussions, the slants that they take on public discussions tend to focus more on a conservative issue. We should also make a distinction between, especially when it comes to media houses, a distinction between an opinionated show or program and a news program. A news program generally should be basically covering the issues, reporting on the issues, and reporting it in a balanced and fair way. A discussion program, on the other hand, like, for example, a program like this, the various talk shows across on the radio stations, those are opinionated shows. So on those shows, you don't necessarily expect balance per se, if I may use that. You expect to hear opinions being expressed, and opinions from across the board. Some people call for supporting a certain issue or political organization, or the government for that matter, and some will call, oppose it. People are free to express their opinions when it comes to certain things on talk shows. But then when it comes to a news program, it's a whole nother...
It's different.
It's a different story.
Yeah.
So you have to make that distinction. As it relates, the private or the government, state-owned journalists, and some of them are members of our association. I expect that regardless of whether you work state-owned or you work in a private entity, that the knowledge and the skills that you will get from a training is valuable. It doesn't matter if you are aligned to the government or you're a private independent journalist or working for a private independent entity. The knowledge that you gain is priceless. And I must make the point that these training workshops, whether it be by the Media Association or through the ACM, through MIC, are not, they might be free to you, but they cost. They cost money. And in many instances, a lot of these facilitators, they would charge a lot of money to do their training exercises. So it should not be deemed or seen as anything frivolous. The knowledge you get from that should be cherished and be utilized. And I believe that even in a state-owned situation, you can utilize that knowledge. And again, it's down to the newsroom policy, because every newsroom is different. Every newsroom has a different policy as it relates to, how they cover. But I think that, again, the skills can be used in those areas and should be used in those areas. And I don't see, especially when it comes to matters of the economy, I don't see why it would not be embraced, even in a situation like that. Of course, I understand, the nuances of certain things when it comes to whatever the policy is and whether your reporting is going to go against that policy, etc. Again, that's really up to the newsroom. But I think the skills and the knowledge that you get from that is still very vital.
Andre, I wanted to speak on some of the other challenges that reporters and journalists face. A big one for me is reporters having to deal with threats. And, after hearing this now, you may say threats. Reporters in St. Kitts and Nevis, have they ever been threatened or intimidated? Yes. Yes. How would the Media Association respond to media workers being threatened or intimidated by basically doing their work?
Well, I could say, and being someone who have faced that before while doing my work, that's something that we will take very seriously as an association. It's not something to take lightly, especially now when you have a lot of people hiding behind fake profiles on social media. It is something we have also expressed to the ACM in our meetings with them, and they have given their full support, whatever support we need when it comes to those matters, that they will certainly be involved. So with the ACM and of course, even on our own, we intend to tackle those matters or take those matters seriously. One of the meetings that we intend to have, and which I mentioned last time I was here, is with the Police High Command. We have a number of issues that we want to discuss with them, and definitely something like that is something that we would want to, we would condemn publicly, and we would, in whatever support we can provide to our members who are threatened, ensure that is reported to the police and the necessary investigation takes place. Because one of the things that St. Kitts and Nevis has been rated highly on, and generally the Eastern Caribbean and the Caribbean in general, is that generally speaking, journalists are free to do their job, their work. They work in a relatively safe environment. But there have been incidents or cases, maybe not so much here, but definitely across the Eastern Caribbean and in the Caribbean in general, where journalists either have been threatened. In the past, we've had situations where journalists here and media workers here have been arrested while doing their work. So we know that things like these do exist and has the propensity of happening, and we are not, in any way taking those things lightly. So when reports come in from any of our members that this happened, and we do our investigation where that is concerned, we certainly will be publicly condemning it, and with the help of the police, also provide whatever information that needs to be provided so that necessary investigation can take place. Because it's not something to be taken lightly.
Do you think it's a case of where, as you spoke about earlier, I think Jeremy made the point too, public information, or basically educating the public about the role of the media? Do you think it is a case of where people are not really educated on what or the role of the media is? Or is it just a case where people see the media as being this big bad bully,
It might be partially so, but I think it goes beyond ignorance. I think generally speaking, and I know there's one particular caller who likes to refer to it as it's an occupational hazard, and that is true. In the sense that journalists all over the world, and especially in countries where the free press is not, something that they have, it's not a norm. It is part and parcel of what you do as a journalist. You're faced with as a journalist. That doesn't make it right, however, and it doesn't make it, especially in a country that is supposed to be free, and you're rated highly when it comes to the free press and and media. It is not something that should be tolerated any way whatsoever. But yeah, ignorance may play a role, but I think generally speaking, journalists are always at risk because, as Jermaine mentioned earlier in the first half of the show, if you're covering something that some people might interpret as you're making the government look bad, or you're making a political organization look bad, and of course, I don't think any journalist, a journalist with ethics, is going to get up one day and say, well, today I'm going to do a story to do so and so, make them look bad, or try to get revenge, or that's not. We don't go in the newsroom and plan to destroy people's lives. But in the process of reporting, at times you are going to anger some people. You are going to make some people unhappy with the work that you're doing, especially if you're looking to uncover things that are illegal or not ethical. So you are going to be in a position like that, and in a case like that, there are some people who will be happy with your reporting, and others will not be so happy. At the end of the day, you still have to do your job. It's nothing personal. You have nothing personal against the persons who may be on the wrong end of the story. The key is really is to make sure that you provide them the opportunity, especially if they are subject to the story, you provide them the opportunity to respond. And to give them a fair chance of being a part of the story. But in terms of, and some will comply and some won't. Some will go down the lines of threats. but you have to do what you have to do.
I know there's a case where this is in relation to a comment that was made on social media just yesterday, that is. Under the former administration, there are reporters here in St. Kitts and Nevis who, were reporting the facts. There were some issues that came about under the former administration, some things that, if you report on this, it's going to ruffle some feathers and people are going to be unhappy with you reporting on this. Nevertheless, reporters, they went ahead and they did their work. The comment that I saw is in relation to what you just said, Andre, where a story was published that is not necessarily, what's the word I'm looking for? Not in line with what the government would want to see. Let me just say that, right? And the first comment on towards that story was, where were the journalists for the past 7 years? Meaning under the former administration, So in some cases, maybe people decide to, deliberately, intentionally forget. But that's a big challenge right there where, you report the news or you report the facts and, you're going to have people who are going to be in favor of it and those who are not going to be in favor of it. I've seen that for myself. A few weeks leading up to the election, on several occasions on my way to work, I've been, I haven't actually officially reported this, but I've been, victim to verbal harassment, But these things are expected. It's sad, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and in a case like that, and like I said, when you have situations, especially if it involves physical contact, it should be taken seriously. I had a situation years ago when I was covering, of all places, Nevis. Nevis was the last place I expected to have to deal with something like that. I was covering the elections. This was back in 2011. And there was a gentleman there, and I see him on the street from time to time. I don't think you remember who I am. But he was very vociferous towards me when he found out I was working here at WINN FM at the time. He felt that we were not very kind in our reporting to his political party. And he was very vociferous towards me, close to physical contact. And I walked him out, and at one point I responded to him because, he was inhibiting me from doing my work. He was preventing me because at the time I was trying to interview one of the political candidates who he was a supporter of, and he was trying to get the candidate not to speak to me and coming in between me and it was close to physical.
Right.
And I had to basically tell him to leave me alone and let me do my work. At the time I reported it, when I came back, I reported it to my editor at the time, Mr. Backus, and the first thing he asked me was, did he touch you? Or do you want to report it to the police? At the time I told him no. I had another situation again where I was working on a story and contacted someone for a comment. The person messaged me later on after, well, the person declined the comment, but messaged me later and basically threatened me. And basically said, well, they don't want no story on this, and if I do anything on it, using expletives, etc., etc.
Right, understood.
So these things happen, and as like I said, it's part of what you do as a journalist. Of course, when it gets to the levels of threat, you have to begin to take it seriously because you don't. And I must say, in those instances, I didn't report it because I didn't really think it needed to at the time. Maybe it wasn't a wise thing to do, but at the time I didn't. But the point remains, though, that criticism comes with the job. There are some people who will commend you and there's some who will criticize you. There's some who like your work and there are some who don't like your work. That's part of the territory. I've been doing this now for over 20 years, so it's like water off a duck's back. I understand that is the territory. So I don't really take it too seriously. But of course, there are certain things that when you cross a line, when you begin crossing that line, then it needs to be taken to the next level because you have to protect yourself as a journalist. I even talk about, for example, Kiran Maharaj, who is the president of the MIC, Media Institute of the Caribbean. I was interviewing her some time ago, and she spoke at the time. She was a correspondent for CNN in the US, and she was being threatened, I think, by, I don't want to misquote her, but it was a very serious story she was working on, and she was threatened. I'm trying to remember if it was a drug cartel or something, and she was threatened, and she sought protection from her place of employment for them to hire security, for her to, and at the time they didn't, and she quit her job because at the end of the day, she has to protect herself and her family. So when the necessary measures weren't taken to provide that protection, she felt it was not, worth risking her life over. So she left the job. So there are things like these that journalists have to deal with. Fortunately, here in St. Kitts and Nevis, even despite the incidents I referred to, generally speaking, though, you're free to report, you're free to do your work. You will face verbal abuse.
A lot of
if that is the most we'll get, we will take it.
Yes.
Because it's part of the job, you're going to get it. So in the same breath, while I admire and I thank persons who may commend me on my work, I also know that even some of the same individuals that are commending you will also criticize you if they see the need to.
Yes.
And so whether their criticism is fair or not, that's part of the job. So you just deal with it as it comes. But yeah, it's just part of the job. But the area, though, that I think, and you made a point earlier about, persons are saying, well, where was the journalist for 6 years, 7 years? Interestingly enough, I was thinking about that same thing yesterday. That was the same response we got from Team Unity supporters when the government changed in 2015. The same response. I've had people stop me on the road and say, why we never asked Dougie these questions when Dougie was in power for 20 years? We never asked Dougie these questions. No, we come and ask Dr. Harris these questions. Why we never, we were afraid of Dougie and we ain't afraid of Dr. Harris. No, that the government has changed. The same response. The very same response.
And I was baffled.
So it just comes, for me, it comes down to this. If it is not your party that's in power, you must grill them.
Yes.
If it is my party in power,
take it easy.
Take it easy on them.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to journalism, it don't work so. It don't work so at all.
Andre, I sighed real for the first time yesterday.
It don't work so.
And I was like, wow. I mean, it's amazing how quick people pretend to forget,
Just
but
this
I
week.
think it's a cycle.
It's a cycle. Just Thursday, I was at a PTA meeting at a school, and a lady came to me and said, Mr. Huey, I watched your interview with the Prime Minister. I listened to your interview with the Prime Minister. Why y'all never asked the former Prime Minister all these questions when he was in office? I said, well, I never had a sit-down interview with the former Prime Minister. I had a sit-down interview with this one, and so I was able to ask him these questions. And I said, well, y'all ain't gonna tie up my Prime Minister, Y'all ain't gonna tie up my Prime Minister. I said, oh man, no man, we ain't gonna harm. We're not harming anybody. We don't intend to harm anybody. We're just doing our job. But
right.
No, but yeah, as you say, it is a cycle because we had the same response, in the previous under the previous administration. So I'm not surprised that I'm hearing the same thing by some supporters, not all, some.
Some, yes.
No,
yes.
But it's part of what, and anyone who's in power, whether you're this current government or the previous administration. One of the things that makes a democracy is transparency. And one of the ways in which you get transparency is through journalism, robust journalism. So if a reporter is questioning whether it be the Prime Minister or whoever it is, whether it's this Prime Minister or the ones previous to this one, it's you're a journalist, you're doing your job. And they should not feel threatened or to say, well, excuse me, unless of course you're hiding something, there's no need for you to feel threatened. It's part of what makes a democracy. And under both administrations, we've had promises of transparency, more transparency and good governance. Well, this is part of it. So then when the questions are being asked, it shouldn't be seen as an attack. It shouldn't be seen as, well, you have an agenda or you're trying to, no. It is part of democracy. And so you can't have democracy or want to make demands for accountability and transparency when one party is in power and don't want it with another, and vice versa. It's really across the board. It doesn't matter who is in. You have a responsibility to ask the questions.
Absolutely. And so it is 15 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock. We'll take this short break, and when we come back, we'll continue Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. Let's take this break, and we'll be right back.
You found the sound, 98.9.
Caribbean tourism is dead in the water and wholly dependent on what's next in the United States, Europe, and Canada.
Global cases have now passed 13 million just 5 days after we hit the 12 million mark.
In Jamaica, residents of the parish of Hanover are in
TDC Financial Services. We're here for you to help you make your dreams come true. Whether your needs are big or small, we'll support you with them all. TDC Financial Services. We are strong. TDC Financial Services. This is where you belong.
TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
No, I'm good. I have a drink here, so.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
Welcome back to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. I'm your host for today. We have on the panel the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis, being represented by its president, Mr. Andre Huey. Andre, we have just a few minutes left before we close the program today. Do you have anything else you wanted to share with the general public?
Yeah, well, definitely. And as we've been seeing a lot, we've been talking about the freedom of information legislation, which is something that is high on our agenda, as I said. And this weekend, we're actually going to be meeting with an attorney on that to, refine some of the recommendations we want to make. But they're just, for example, and I could give you a practical example of some of the things that is in the current legislation that leaves room for interpretation. And normally when it leaves room for interpretation, it can work against the objective of the legislation, why the legislation is there in the first place. For example, and I understand also, there are nuances to it. There are, while there are some things that are put in there safeguard to protect the interests of the public and the government, the work of the government, it can also be served as a loophole to prevent you from getting the information that you need to get. And I guess this could be one of them, and I think this is something that's in most of the legislation of this kind. Section 31, which is defense and security, talks about a public body shall refuse to indicate whether or not it holds a record or refuse to communicate information where to do so would be likely to cause serious prejudice to the defense or national security of St. Christopher and Nevis. Meaning, essentially, and I'm not a lawyer, but I think I understand what this means, that if something is published or if providing a certain information will threaten the national security of the country, the body, the body reserves, in this case, I guess the commissioner of the information would reserve the right to prevent or not give you that information. Mm-hmm. And similar, I've seen this in similar other access to information legislation. Sometimes I've heard of journalists in other countries in the Caribbean that have this law that when they get information, it's heavily redacted, that it almost doesn't make sense to get the information in the first place. And of course, it's redacted for whether it be national security purposes or whatever. And to that, however, you have a situation where if the government or whoever is responsible for giving the information can determine or is in a position to determine whether or not this information could threaten national security, it could prevent you from getting the information. So we're looking at ways in which, at the same time, you don't want to jeopardize the country or jeopardize the work of the government, but you want to ensure that, these tools are not used as ways to prevent you from getting information that is pertinent. Another one, too, which, again, is left up to interpretation. And I remember when we had the meeting with the former Attorney General when he was AG at the time, this was one of the discussion points that we had. And it's the Section 15, which speaks of vexatious, repetitive, or unreasonable request. Basically, it's in two parts. A public body is not required to comply with a request for information which it determines is vexatious, or where it has recently complied or complied with a substantially similar request from the same person. So in other words, if someone keeps going and asking for particular information,
you could say no.
It could be determined as a vexatious request, and you could be denied the information. A public body is not required to comply with a request for information which do so would reasonably divert its resources. So vexatious, and we asked the then AG what is meant by vexatious, because if an information that you requested, if they feel like, well, you shouldn't be getting this information, or you just plan to do mischief with the information, then they could just deny you. That's my interpretation of it. I could be wrong, but of course, with the proper guidance, we will get a better understanding of what this means, because then, again, as you've said before, what you don't want a situation is that when the law is functioning, that if these sections are in or are left up to interpretation, that it could deny you the opportunity to get information that is pertinent to whether you're a journalist or whether you're just a citizen that wants that information.
Right. I see where you're coming from. And do we have a caller on the line? Let's take this call. Caller, you're on the air. Good afternoon.
Yes, good day, gentlemen. I was just wondering if, because I haven't really read it throughout, does the legislation right now on freedom of information include whistleblower protection? And shouldn't that be, if it isn't, shouldn't that be part of your advocacy to include it so as to protect your sources?
Yeah.
Among other things.
There are whistleblower aspects in it, yes. There's one particular section, which I can read it, a bit of it. In Section 48, Part 7, Section 48 says, a person may disclose information to the commissioner, that's the person who would be in charge of providing the information, or to any other authority on the wrongdoing by a public authority concerning A, a serious threat to health or safety of an individual or a serious threat to the public or the environment, B, the commission of a criminal offense, failure to comply with legal obligation, a miscarriage of justice, corruption, dishonesty, or serious maladministration, abuse of authority or neglect in the performance of official duty, injustice to an individual, and unauthorized use of public funds. And that person, the whistleblower, shall not be liable to any legal proceedings or to any sanction related to his or her employment if the information was disclosed in good faith and in the reasonable belief that it was true. So that section
does that apply though throughout the system, or does it only apply to the information officer?
Well, it applies to it appears just reading from this that it applies throughout the system. So the person may disclose the information to the commissioner, and based on the law, they should be protected against legal proceedings if it is proven that they give it in good faith. There's another section too. Let me just read this other section. It says, a person who, pursuant to subsection 1, which is the one I just read, discloses information maliciously or without reasonable belief to the truthfulness of that information, commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $5,000 or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years or to both.
That's if you give wrong information.
Right? Or you did so maliciously.
Or you did so maliciously.
Yeah.
But suppose the information commissioner is bypassed and it goes straight to the journalist, what happens in that case?
That's a good question, and that's something we'll probably have to look at to see if there is any section that would provide protection to the journalist, because protection of sources is a very, very valid point that you raised, and it's something that, especially in a small community like St. Kitts and Nevis, can have debilitating effects to the journalist.
Because in all due respect, we import these things like you don't want to jeopardize national security or defense, when in fact they're just red herrings. In a small country like us, how many defense secrets are there? I mean, what apart from people's personal and private information, what kinds of secrets should a government agency be holding? Apart from their records and personal information.
Yep.
There really isn't much to be hiding. Okay, and so I would regard things like those as essentially loopholes.
Yeah.
Right, and so, but really, that information commissioner, it would be interesting to see how it functions in that role, because, in a sense, he will have lots of leeway to be kind of a doorkeeper, so to speak, and either block the reporter's access to information or protect the government in some way. So it will be interesting to see the relationship between somebody like that and the media association. So, just like how it certainly would be interesting to see what kind of relationship develops between the media association and somebody like the press secretary to the prime minister, or even SKNIS, whose information may be necessary to challenge information from those sources because they are essentially regarded as biased.
Yeah.
Okay. But it will be interesting to see how this develops, and certainly in terms of the whistleblowing, because I think that is essentially how lots of information, the media get a lot of information which may be injurious to the government. And one would argue something that is injurious to the government is really subjective. If government is open and transparent, really, it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I raised the issue of the national security, that component, because, like I said, it's subjective, and it can be subjective. I shouldn't say subjective, but it can be, interpreted as, whether or not I give this information, it will threaten national security, and so it could affect people in general.
Yeah, it would be nice if these things were left to the character and professionalism of the individual holder of the office. Make sure that there are do's and don'ts and penalties and certainly some kind of evaluation as to how people like these do their jobs. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, caller, thank you so much for your contribution to this program. Andre, it is 1:29, just 1 minute left before we wrap up the program today. You wanted to respond to the caller?
Yeah, well, I think the caller is right in that the issue of the whistleblower is very important. I think also one of the things that we have to factor in as well is that whoever it is that is going to be the information commissioner, they have a major role to play, because they also, I'm assuming, will also have to swear to secrecy, for example, because a whistleblower who comes to the commissioner with information, St. Kitts and Nevis is a small community, right? So that person has to uphold secrecy in terms of not disclosing, not even to the persons that would be at the other end of the investigation that the whistleblower would have information would have led to, should know who that is. Then it comes back down even also to journalists. There are journalists who have been imprisoned because they refuse to disclose who their sources are, because you as a journalist, ethically speaking, you protect your source, regardless of who that person is. So it will be interesting to see how that section, the whistleblower aspect of the legislation will work. But I think it's important because if you realize over the last few months, for example, some of the stories that broke here in St. Kitts Nevis came from leaked documents. Now, legally speaking, the person who is responsible for leaking those documents would have committed an infringement. But with this legislation in place, if they do so according to the law, not maliciously, they don't do it with evil intent, but to report a matter, and well, of course, doing it through the channels, of course, through the commissioner in this instance, then you would have a situation where that person will be protected or should be protected by law. So it is important.
All right, Andre, we are at the end of the program today. Again, thank you so much for joining us here. And the Media Association is always welcomed here at WINN FM to share with the general public what is going on, what are some of the activities happening in the Media Association, and the work that you guys are doing to support media workers in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Definitely. We appreciate that, and we want to thank you, Devon, and WINN FM for accommodating us today. For the second time, actually, because we were here on Voices last week. And so we are grateful. The media tour has been a success so far. We've covered quite a number of media houses, including WINN FM, and we've gotten good responses from the public as well as also from members of the media who have also discovered, as a result of our promotional work, that the association is up and running, and some of them have even applied and joined, registered. So we are thankful for that, and we continue as an association. We know there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of the media is not perfect in St. Kitts and Nevis, but we strive to get better and better. And so through the work of the association, we hope that we will be able to educate the public on the role of the media, while at the same time improving the standard of media and journalism in St. Kitts and Nevis.
All right, thank you so much. This has been Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9 for Saturday, October 1st, 2022. I'm your host for today. I've been your host for today, Devon Cornelius. Until next time, you guys take care. Bye-bye.